Well, hello there. Look at that. That's a big old chaos dwarf hold. We should crush those, though, because they're evil. Evil, evil, evil. But that's okay. Today, I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about my free city of Sigmar. I have an absolute shit ton of notes here. It's actually 8 pages of stuff about them, although the last page is just some notes in case I post it on Google Docs for people to see stuff, but if they weren't familiar with Age of Sigmar. And I decided to do this because, hey, people liked me when I talked about my Rift Drake, so why wouldn't I talk about my free city? And I'm going to play Warhammer Total War 3 while I do this. But I have turned on the... It is very scary. But I have turned on the cheats while I do this, so that I can have, so I don't have to worry about thinking or trying or anything like that while I play. And let's see. Who should I play for this? You know what? I think I will play Greenskins. And
schemes, I got schemes.
And I'm gonna play my little goblin buddy here, because why not? I like my goblin buddy. And we're just gonna play with this for a little bit while I talk about my city, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. And knowing me, I'm probably gonna talk about it for way too long. But, you know, I'm gonna try and get through a lot of little details here. And things like that. I am not as familiar with Age of Sigmar as I am with Warhammer 40k. I am very familiar with Warhammer 40k and Warhammer Fantasy. Age of Sigmar I know stuff about, but I don't know as much in detail, so there's a few things that could be off in here. The essential idea, just to sum up before I even get started in it, is that it's a city in Gur that is floating above Gur, and it's full of crazy monsters and beasts and thingies like that, and it has its own little exiled pantheon. And the whole idea behind this exiled pantheon is that basically one of these gods got a vision that one day chaos is going to swarm over everything, and then they needed to move. So basically these gods gathered their followers, and it went through and was going through all the different realms until it got to Gur, and gathered up a bunch of lesser gods, like small pantheon type gods, and now they are all living or sort of inhabiting the same kind of space, and now they're protecting the city. Okay. And so Hexus is a place of refuge for those who have been rejected by traditional order societies. Obscure ideas, madmen, the lonely sinner, and your peculiar saint all have homes in Hexus. The people are hardy. Man, there's a lot of gooey noise going on. The people are hardy and have taken to worshipping a strange pantheon of exiled gods who have each left their own realms to find a home in this out-of-the-way place. So basically, the idea here is that it's, let me turn this down just a little bit, because, I'm trying to talk, but, oops, no. It's probably not going to be super loud on your guys' end, but, just, for some reason, the background noises are, really loud right now.
Supreme ruler of 8 peaks.
Oh, that's weird. It looks like it...
Scarslick warlord of 8 peaks.
Okay, there. But basically, this is an entire mountain range in Gur that is floating above another mountain range, and it's kind of a reverse crater. So there's just well, not a reverse crater. I guess it would just be a regular crater, but it's a crater that goes way down. and it's just like floating above there, and there are like all these different like islands of mountains, like kind of like strung and like floating together with these gigantic chains and things going back and forth, and magical energy and things like that. And Caradon things are going back and forth, steamships are going back and forth, dirigibles and things like that, all like transporting people around and trying to get people back and forth to their little jobs and things like that. This is all above the Shatterspine Mountains. Now, I don't think the Shatterspine Mountains are a real thing. I just like that name. Um, and another thing about this city is that it's actually wrapped around with this very long eldritch web. Part of what empowers the city to keep it floating is that there's a spider god that spins a web, and its followers spread the web like all across the underside of the city, and it kind of like streams across and goes all over the place and kind of holds the mountains together. And also like sometimes some of the really big spiders can crawl across from like web to web, and it's like all webbed up in this gigantic mountain range type deal. Um, there's also like several different kind of like biomes where there's like parts of it are very kind of like more humid, and they have just like humid air for some reason, just kind of floats and stays around like the arcane or like some of the arcane mountains. And then like in other areas it's like there's a lot of snowy peaks and just thick forests, and there are just strange creatures inhabiting everywhere. It's like a semi-wild city where like it's all fenced, and it's like this huge place, and nearly the size of a mountain range, but it's like full of like different beasties and things like that inside the city, and the people inside the city have like learned to live with these creatures inside of the city. It's also home to humans, Duarden, and elves, so you know it has your regular humans. It also has like humans who are like kind of taken to worshiping these like there's a lot of like cults and things like that, so there's like humans who like wear a lot of different strange outfits, but there's also Duardens, so there's dwarves in the city and elves as well, and they all work and live in this like slightly offbeat harmony to keep themselves safe and the city functioning. The people of Hexus have taken to wearing a variety of bright colored silk woven from webs of rainbow furred spiders. So basically they have these like gigantic rainbow colored spiders that like spin out like all kinds of different uh colored silks and things like that. And they can spin these silks into like different kinds of clothing and things like that. And all of this stuff is kind of, you know, woven together. Let's see here. Let's do. Really don't really need to worry about income generated while I have the cheats on and all that. So we'll just do this to get the growth going. Wow. And they use like these different animals as well, because like sometimes like the giant snakes and stuff, there's giant snakes in parts of the city, and they'll shed their skin. They'll like collect the old scales, and they can like kind of knit those into different colored fabrics and fibers, and like a special kind of like leather armor, which is pretty brittle, but it can take a few blows before it breaks and things like that. And for the style of the city, the people inside the city, they like to wear like headscarves and long flowing robes with traditional slippers are common among most folk, and some folks kind of prefer to wear like breechers and tall boots, and like lined with like fur or like thicker clothes and things like that.
Make a good plan. Make 'em bleed.
Oh no, he ran away.
You want schemes? I got schemes.
You shouldn't run away from me. And like all this stuff is like woven together with different
Who needs killing?
with different kinds of materials. Okay, let's see here. Let's do one of those, 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 one of those. Or recruit all those to have a bunch of units of renown because that's kind of funny to me.
Here. Kill 'em all!
Oh no, they've declared war on each other. How dare they? They shouldn't do that. Not while I'm around because I'm going to gobble them up. Gobbly gobbly up. So they have the. So if you want to like imagine what these guys look like, they kind of have. I sort of based their clothes a little bit on like Morocco, a little bit. So they have like a lot of like reds and greens and blues and things like that. But they wear like these really long robes or these long flowing robes, and they like to wear headscarves. So they kind of wear like turbans and sort of like hijabs and things like that sometimes, or just like like different ways of tying up their hair. And they wear pretty comfortable clothing because for the most part the mountainous terrain is like temperate and they don't really have too many problems. There's also a lot of people who maybe wear like a little bit less clothing because a lot of people swim because there's these big rivers that flow in between like each like around the different mountains and like use like spells and runes to basically keep the water always flowing. And there's several of these big mountainous islands that actually have like large lakes like right in the middle of them.
Rotting and steaming. No way! Gobbler's hungry!
And all these places are kind of like net like neat
You loony!
like kind of like tied together with like spider silks and like various different like animal environments and caves and things like that. And one of the other things here is that like deep within the bowels of the city, they're like filled with these crisscrossing tunnels where there's like temples of shadow and like gigantic snakes make their homes. And some folks around here actually trade special fungus brews with some of the grots that live in the city and below the city. Because there are actually aurochs and grots that live within the city, just not very many. But there's also a ton that live below the city, like down in the craters and like in like the deepest caves and mines and things like that. And they'll occasionally come up and trade, especially like their specially brewed like fungus uh, potions and like their specially made fungus dishes and things like that with the people in like the networks of tunnels. There's also like this is also where like a lot of the forages are. So like deep down in the tunnels, there's a ton of forages working like night and day, creating all kinds of armor and you know different sorts of artifacts and the things like that to try and they're like always creating weapons and different kinds of artifacts. Like they're well known for like how much they like to work pewter and silver and other kind of different metals that they can find. They also use this to keep the city's trade functioning. Gold, iron, coal, and other materials are brought up from below the floating city as flying ship carries materials from the mines. Um, there's also like a whole network of farms, fortresses, and temples that dot both like Hexus proper, which is the big floating city itself, and there's like all kinds of fortresses and little farms and things like that below. But the ones below have to deal with way more monsters and things like that. But they have their own defenses and things. So they're always trying to like move about and like keep construction up and keep it going. The people in the floating city don't have to worry about that as much because uh where is Karagate Peaks? There's Karazigo Crack. Oh, there's Karagate Peaks.
I got me brother.
But they have all these different like things built together, and they're always trying to uh create new farms and things like that because the beasts and the way Gur is with land always shifting and things changing all the time, they have to continue to like rebuild and build up again and again to try and keep their farms and everything still producing the materials they need. So they end up always like trading out new materials and things like that. Now, this is where one of the interesting things, or at least one, I think all this is interesting, of course. But one of the things I like about the city is that like all these farms and fortresses and extra mines and things like that. Part of the reason they're always trying to produce more material is because this whole area is just lousy with aurochs and ogres and grots. There's a ton of them. But what they realized, what the city has realized early on, is that they can trade with at least a decent number of the Auric clans and the Grots and the Ogres and give them food, supplies, and weaponry, better weaponry, like finely crafted weapons and armor, so that they can fight basically a never ending swarm of beastmen and chaos worshippers that are always trying to get into the city, and a never ending swarm of beasts that provide like a good fight. So they trade with these Aurochs and these ogres and all these other different clans around the place. They give them supplies and weapons, and they pay them off. Some of them pay off in like a more official capacity where they're more like actual mercenaries and things like that, and they're always trying to keep them like placated and happy so that they do the vast majority of the fighting, because in this area there's just never-ending swarms of beastmen. The beastmen never seem to stop coming. So the orcs are always fighting off large amounts of beastmen, but they're also fighting off like it's Gur, so there's a lot of just strange, monstrous creatures that are always like showing up here and there, or sons of Behemoth, or so many other creatures that are just trying to destroy anything in their path. But these huge orc clans and these clans of like Gloomspite gets down below and all these others, uh, they're paid off and given enough supplies that they are doing the vast majority of the fighting. This is also why sometimes you can go and actually see Oryx in the city itself, in the city proper. Like, and you can see grots and things. Like, grots are a little bit more welcome because they're less trouble, but orcs are sometimes wandering around different parts of the city or different parts of either the undercity or in Hexus proper, kind of like gathering supplies and doing things, making deals. Various different like Dubard and mining companies will, for instance, pay off orc clans to like go down and like just smash their enemies, clear out mines, keep things relatively safe until it's time for a bigger war, and they'll go off and do their own thing. Do the same thing with ogres. Ogre mercenaries are common in Hexus, wandering around eating way too much. But another thing that they're trying to keep away is not just the chaos worshippers and not just the beastmen or these big beasts, but they're also trying to keep away Sigmar worshippers. See, these guys don't really trust the Order Pantheon properly, especially after Sigmar left the realm. During the Age of Chaos, these guys did manage to hold on, but it was like by like the skin of their teeth. They were always having to deal with invasions. They, occasionally the Oryx would not have enough chaos to fight, so that Oryx would turn on them. Then they had to fight the Oryx. And then other times, chaos would be in full ascendancy and they'd have to fight off chaos swarms, and there's even like one of the mountain chains, they eventually had to like basically break the weave on it so it could crash down into a coming chaos army. And that's part of there's like a big crater outside the city, and that's used to be where there was going to be a chaos army, but then they flattened them with a literal mountain, and they have to build up their defenses all the time. And they felt like they were abandoned by Sigmar, so they don't worship Sigmar anymore. They worship the old pantheon, and we'll get into those gods here shortly. Now, there is a little bit of Sigmar worship in the town. There are a couple of Sigmar temples just for like foreigners and traders and things like that, but the worship of Sigmar has basically never really caught on too much outside of a few foreign quarters. Um, some of the other gods, like Alariel, have like a tiny presence, but even then, not really very much. And she tends to be, if she's worshipped at all, she's worshipped along like as a almost like a lesser deity by a lot of the people. People don't pay very much attention to the outside gods. They have this pantheon that has protected them and helped keep the city safe. And even in their direst hour, when chaos was bursting into the city and they had to fight tooth and nail just to claw back and push chaos out, like these gods never abandoned them. But they were like, Sigmar has abandoned us. So they don't really feel like embracing Sigmar. And as here it is in the little document I have. The people of Hexus view the ascendant gods with suspicion. They kept to their ancient traditions and survived the coming of chaos, if only barely, without the help of outsider gods. They see many of the folk who worship Sigmar as fanatics, but despite their best efforts, a small following is formed within the city dedicated to Sigmar. The Caradon overlords are some of the few outsiders who frequently visit the city, trading in science and materials. They have provided the city with new technology and a way to contact the outside world. They're considered good friends to the people of Hex, even if they are a bit greedy. So Caradon overlords are probably some of the only outsiders that are actually kind of viewed. It's not that they hate outsiders, but they don't like a lot of what outsiders bring with them, namely other gods and strange traditions and things like that. But it's a city that's kind of full of like weirdos and people from all over the realms who were often not treated very well by the people outside of the realms or outside of their current place. People who like if someone's not treated well in Azir, they're gonna, if they can, they'll come to a place like this and stay. So like it's like, oh no, you can come here and stay, but don't you be trying to like make this place like Azir or like Heldenhammer's towns or anything like that. Don't be trying to make this like Greywater Fastness. This is Hexus. This isn't one of those places. We act differently here. We are welcoming here, but that doesn't mean you can just come in here and try to force change on us. And all right. And the city itself is ruled over by a council of, it's a mix of humans, elves, Dwarden, all these other things. Basically, anyone who like lives in the city long enough, if you live in the city for a number of years and become a citizen, you can be elected to a council position. But a lot of the main council duties are just like, like they're managing things, making sure trade is going well, making sure negotiations with the orc and the ogre tribes down below is continuing to go well and isn't becoming a problem for anyone in the main cities. Oh, I can take Skarsnik's Prodder. Okay, not gonna worry about that right this second. And they're like always, and they're trying to keep it mostly ungrubbed, but of course, that doesn't always happen. Every citizen is required to spend at least a time in either the militia, the free guild builders who maintain the city's infrastructure, or in its mines and farms below the city. So basically, if you know, at some point in pretty much everyone's life, they're going to have to serve in the militia or the free guild builders. And the free guild builders are basically just dudes who go around and are always repairing the infrastructure, the mountains themselves. They're always like rebuilding temples and trying to keep things functioning and going the proper way. Or you have to go work in the and they also work in the infrastructure too, to a certain degree. So they like keep like the alchemy labs and like the doctors and people like that like supplied and like with staff and things like that. Or they work in the mines and the farms below the city, working for their part to maintain like this never-ending chain of supplies and never-ending chain of food to the people, so that they're always like, well taken care of. A lot of them just do this for like a couple of years, and then they'll move on to jobs proper or other jobs. But some people end up, for instance, becoming like career military people and staying in for the rest of their lives, or maybe not the rest of their life, but longer. Um, and all this kind of helps keep it so that the city always is like never short on like soldiers, for instance, is never short on like workers and infrastructure people. It's always keeping those tasks well supplied. There are numerous different tribes who call Hexus home, and there are just as many beasts who live inside the city as they do outside. Giant spiders and drakes can be seen walking the streets at all hours. Golden flying boars take care of the city's trash and swoop in and around the markets. Aquatic oddities swim up and down the riverways and into the eternal lake underneath Mount Kel. And Mount Kel is like one of the largest peaks, the tallest peaks, like kind of in the center of all of the mountain terrain there. The mini beasts of the city participate in daily life and defense of the city just as much as anyone else. They played an integral part in people's daily lives just as much as the gods have. Many of the followers of the pantheon hold gigantic creatures to be sacred or divine, and it is not wise to harm them within the city's walls. Fortress walls line the edge of each floating aisle with ballistas and runes carved into each wall. They are staffed day and night with mirrored spyglasses looking out into the distance. The fire shields patrol the city's streets, watching for signs of chaos incursion, while knights on flying boars scout the perimeter. So the fire shields are basically, they worship the fire guard that we get into in a minute here, and they basically kind of act as like a, not quite an inquisition, because they're not quite that bad. They're not quite that serious uh, about it, but they do. Oh, I shouldn't have ended my thing yet. But they do fight and maintain, and like they watch out for like chaos, like little chaos cults that get into the city, and they watch out for like secret Skaven tunnels and things like that. And they're patrolling around, and like they're mostly keeping an eye open for things like that. Let's see. I'm going to declare war on these guys because I want to see if I can beat them. Let's see. Valiant defeat, huh? Well, you don't understand that I have the power of cheats on my side. And they most, then they kind of keep out of people's business for the most part. They're just kind of like watching from the distance and always trying to make sure that things are going well and just keeping an eye out. They're basically like the city's watch, but with fire. I mean, there's also like the regular city's watch, which is a little different. These guys have more like investigative power and kind of like respond to the direct council's orders and things like that. The city was also founded by a barbarian queen who first discovered the old pantheon. She gathered tribes of humans, dwarves, and elves under one banner and brought them together by the orcs and beasts. To this day, there are descendants of the 33 clans in Hexus. So originally there were like 33 different clans who all like came about from this. I don't even know what's gonna happen with. let's just see. I think there's like basically nothing in the city here, so I think it's just gonna uh be destroyed really quickly, and I guess it's probably not really gonna matter. It's okay. It'll be better under Gobbo management anyway. So don't worry about it too much. Put those guys there. I'm gonna send this one random unit. Where's another place? Okay, we'll send them over there. This is so silly. Put those in there. You guys go over here. You guys go over there. Oh. Oh, I thought I would have had to capture more. Okay, cool. With cheats on, anything's possible. Oh, that's so silly. Fates were rewritten. That's right, they were rewritten. That was it's terrible. But yeah. So you kind of get a picture of the city. It's full of different like giant spiders. It's full of all kinds of different peoples from all across the realms who have been shunned or abused or whatever, and they have come here to build a new life, and they want to keep that life protected. They use the Auric clans to kind of push people out and to keep things going well. They use the ogre clans as mercenaries, and they do much the same thing. And there's like basically fueling these wars out around them from the orcs, so that they were always keeping chaos at bay and things like that. And they're kind of like always they always have several different techniques to try and like break big armies if they really have to. They will throw a whole mountain at an army, but that was of course in a very desperate situation. But they're willing to do that if they absolutely have to. And like these giant ballistas, and for like the giant ballistas, I've always kind of imagined, maybe some of y'all will know what I'm talking about. Like there's like these, in Demon Souls when you fight the dragon god, there's like these gigantic crossbow things. That's kind of what I'm imagining, basically to keep the big gods, or keep the big monsters at bay. And yeah, with all of that, we're gonna go over the gods here and the little pantheon they have. I ended up making 10 little gods because I thought, as I was going through, I thought it was
Worthy of Scarsdale.
I was enjoying writing the stuff out quite a bit, and I just kind of kept um adding more and more. And some of these gods, I'm sure as we go through, some of you guys will probably be like, that kind of sounds like they sound a little bit Lovecraftian. And some of them are kind of inspired by Lovecraftian gods to a certain extent. Like they're inspired by certain like great old ones, because they're like a lot of like big weird monsters that people like pray to and things like that. And maybe I'll get into that a little bit as we go through. Yeah, we're gonna get that. Yay, Karaza correct! Yay! All of my dwarf friends. And don't worry, we're giving them nice jobs. We're not abusing them or anything because I'm in charge. So we're not allowed to abuse them. Although I wonder if dwarves would probably never work for goblins like that. And not in Warhammer Fantasy anyway. So we have some gods to go over here, and I'll go over the first one. The first one is Maki. Maki. And this totally isn't just Makali, but put into Age of Sigmar. I don't know what the heck you're talking about. I don't know why you would say that. That's a weird thing for you to say. But she is god of the heavens. Her first avatar, and avatars in this case are just like the first people who like were sort of like their champions and are like sort of considered like a saint, and they worship alongside her, is Cadla Blackmane. That was the lady who founded the city of Hexus. She was the first queen of Hexus, united the tribes around Hexus, and constructed the original layout for the web that has the city flying. Discovered the Pantheon and united its avatars. Appearance and cult. So Maki is like basically she looks like a woman with a very wild mane of hair who is always smiling with a sun-shaped crown. And by sun-shaped crown, it's kind of like has like different points coming off of it, and it has a lunar crescent in it. She expects her followers to lead highly moral lives and to take care of the less fortunate, as well as advancing philosophy and science. Her followers will study the skies and build great domed temples to her. Jackals and cremation grounds are sacred to her, and you may think, well, that would go good with the god of death, wouldn't it? But, in this case, it's just part of her mythology, and her followers will occasionally cover themselves in sacred ash, which comes, like, basically forms, there's, like, these giant pools inside of her temple that just, for some reason, are constantly producing ash. There's not, like, a fire in them or anything like that. They're just always producing ash. She's associated with aether, science, and magic in a more general sense. Ascetics who follow Maki go out to lunar groves and spend their days among bulbous flowers there. They seek to gain insight into the nature of the cosmos while meditating. Some of them more advanced followers of Maki are able to find, she has like these little celestial pocket dimensions where she rewards them with secret knowledge and mystical artifacts. So her symbols are sun, crescent, a sun with a crescent moon inside of it, a jackal with a moon over its head, a crescent moon turned upwards, a one with a golden crown. And then there's the Lady of Dawn, Ateli. She represents Hyish. Her avatar was an elven woman known for her skill with a spear and strategy. Her appearance is a tall woman with a spear in her right hand and a scroll in her left hand. Her followers believe in serving the city's military, the city and the military as scholars, or in building up the city. They are always keep a writing utensil or a knife on themselves as a sign of devotion. Her symbols are a young lady, a pair of spears crossed with a scroll above them, or a spear with a shining point. It looks almost like a spear with a star on top of it. There's the Great Spider, Natak. She's the god of death, Shyish. Reti Gloomeye was a dark elf who helped create the web of magic around the city to catch loyal souls from Shyish and bind the floating city together. She started the mortuary cult in Hexus. Her gender is female. Appearance and cult. A colossal spider who's always giving birth to more spiders with a blue flame on her abdomen. She sought to escape Nagash and the realm of Shyish to raise her numerous broods in peace. She expects her followers to slay monstrous undead, take care of her children. Sometimes her priests will have tattoos of like webs and stuff on them, and like she's basically just like a gigantic spider who's like always like her followers kind of think she's like weaving a web of like fate or something like that. I mean, basically they think that she's like oh, I bet you if I go into this city here, because there's probably going to be a bunch of Skaven in there.
I'm leaving.
I will declare war on the clan Verns. Because fuck you. I know.
Lots of plans.
It's okay.
Killing time.
You're gonna like you're gonna like working for me. It's okay. I have magic powers that drain your armies and things like that. Don't think about it too much.
I'm a schemer. I'm off.
Um And some of her like really dedicated followers will basically live in these like giant like spider nests and things like that, and will always like take care of the young. And some of them believe that if they are truly loyal to her, they'll be reborn in like basically be reincarnated as like gigantic spiders.
I hear ya.
So yeah, I think she's pretty cool, gigantic spider. And her symbols are a large spider, a web with a skull in the middle, a pair of mandibles beneath, two pairs of eyes. And then we have Yothgoi, who is like basically a gigantic snake, who had a human mage as their um, original avatar. And Yothgoi is non-binary, so it's neither male nor female, and they tend to refer to Yothgoi as like
Hefty.
they
Let's do it.
and things like that.
Need killing. Moving.
There we go. Just making sure there's no.
You want schemes? I got schemes. Legging it.
Do you really have schemes? But it's also like the god of shadows, and people basically worship this one to because of it says like guile and things like that, and it helps like predict and like watch over the city
Like a good plan.
and like help people sneak about. His followers are required to take in anyone who is like in need and ask them to. When the shadows of the Undercity spend hours in secret caves learning the art of the Shadow Weavers, where they will become masters of stealth and learn the mysteries of their god. Its symbols are a white coiled snake around a black orb, a white snake, two black eyes crossed over each other. So it's kind of like two eyes, then they kind of look like an X over each other.
Got plans? Like it. Stab 'em up.
Oh, Valea's sorrow, huh? Now it's Valea's tomorrow.
Supreme ruler of 8 peaks.
Basically a gigantic albino snake. I think it's pretty cool. There's a Mushti, who is like a boar eagle. So basically, it's a gigantic golden boar with a pair of like eagle wings coming out of its back and each of its feet, and then like a big set of talons. This one's male. Its avatar was Brundir Silverhammer, a Dwarven runesmith who carved protective runes around the city and helped construct the fortresses around the pillars of Amashti. Uh, the boar favors craftsmen and those with great endurance. The boar does not believe in shoddy work, and his followers strive to perfect their craft always. His followers control most of the smithies and forges in the city. His followers pride themselves on keeping their word. They're the ones that are always producing like new metals and things like that, and always like trying to like improve like their rune work. Ooh, apparently that's going to be a decisive defeat, so we're going to break that off here. And what we're going to do is we're going to
Butters ready.
have this guy come out this way. And we're going to see here. Man. Let's see. Hmm. You know what? I'm just gonna hang out outside of the city for a little bit. I just kind of want to see what happens if we. Hmm. Yeah, we're gonna keep. Going there. And the symbols are a pair of tusks crossed over an anvil, A pair of golden orbs with a arrow between them, a golden boar, a winged boar. Then there's Diroti, who is basically a giant, like half goat, half fish creature. And let's see here. She's like the goddess of life and like Gyran and stuff like that, and people pray to her for fertility and things like that. She has like a lot of like these weird like mix matched aquatic creatures like giant crabs and other like weird like
Warlord and we'll be just fine.
oh, a non-aggression pact, okay. And like basically big underwater goats and other weird things like that. Um let's see here. What can we here? Let's build this so that we can get some wolf riders. And things like that.
Before you says anything, Gobbler ain't eating today.
And her temples are like intertwined, like with riverside gardens where aquatic life and land-based life mingle. Exotic fruits and vegetables are grown in her, things like that. And people are always like brewing like special potions and stuff to give to one another, and like special wines and like sacred wines they use in their rituals. Nakab, who is the bull drake, basically a giant bull lizard thing, bull drake thing. And that's the god of fire, and that's the that that one's avatar was a dwarden who uses the axe to anoint people with flame. Oh, I almost forgot. The avatar for Diroti was Dara the Wanderer, who was a wood elf. Um, and Nakub appearance and call a large bull with brimstone scales across its body and a draconic head, with a wide pair of horns on top of which the fire is constantly burning between its horns to test traitors and chaos. And his followers aim to prove themselves with acts of devotion and fire sacrifices, which is they wish to have chaos all burned to ash. Followers will sometimes carve themselves a sacred ash, like the followers' monarchy. His temples are basically these giant fire pits where people like dance and do like using the ash crust fungus brew. The priest will gain ecstatic states and like look into the fire and unlock into fire and try to unlock the mystery of the ash. They weave magnificent spells and cook great feasts with the lesser fires while looking for clues as to where to find their next hidden chaos cult. Um, the next god, this is the god of beasts, Gur in this case, is the monkey tiger Hanapsa. His avatar was Godbrand One Eye, who was a human hunter who helped slay the giant beast sieging the city in times of need and helped tame the first great beast to protect the city. He's basically a four-armed monkey with a tiger's head. I thought that was a pretty interesting little look there. His followers go into sacred rituals to perform uh like these big sacred rituals and get in touch with their animal side. They basically like kind of like parody out or act out like being like different kinds of like wild beasts, and like the longer they enter these like ecstatic states, like the more
What?
they'll kind of like take on some of those appearances, and like people can like become like really strong by worshiping him, and like he blesses people with like strength, and um sometimes he blesses people with different special abilities and things like that. And his symbols are a four-armed monkey, a tiger's head, two pairs of crossed maces because he has like these big obsidian crossed maces, these obsidian maces. The frog below is Kolpi. He's a god of seas, lakes, and beasts. Avatar of the old shaman of the swamp, who's basically this old dude who hangs out in the swamp and nobody actually knows like who he really is or if he's really still alive or where he came from or anything like that. And he's basically been around for as long as anybody can remember. Alright, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm now going to recruit another lord, and we're going to recruit a shaman.
Nasty magic's ready.
Yeah, we're going to recruit all those guys. Ooh, build. But basically, it's a gigantic frog who has like a pair of antlers growing on his head and has a big beard and he is always trying to eat chaos. He hates chaos. He hates Nurgle in particular, and he wants to eat Nurgle followers. So sometimes he'll like you can summon his children onto the battlefield, and they'll just like gulp up Nurgle followers. It's like their favorite treat, and they're like immune to these diseases. And one of the things that's kind of interesting about these guys is, oops. Oh, there it is. His followers will. Oh, and his antlers are covered in different kinds of seaweed. If one is afflicted with plague, disease, they can climb to the mouth of one of Colby's children and lay under their tongues. After doing so for a time, that their diseases will be cured. This is a kind of time. It takes a while to do this, but if you're like really favored among Colby, basically you can climb into one of the giant frog's mouth and be healed. The followers of Colby will often meditate while submerged in warm water or around his stone idols, which float across lakes and his swamps. The swamps that his children inhabit. One is expected to bring food as an offering and place it within the mouth of his stone effigies. The food will burn with a green fire and will be consumed after one says the proper prayer. His temples are often found on the backs of large turtles, who will appear at will when the time is right to receive offerings. Those who become close to Kolpi can breathe underwater and sometimes become more frog-like over time. His symbols are a frog, antlers, a bearded frog, and toadstools. And then last but not least is the cat, Cozy, the dream cat, Cozy. God of dreams, visions, protection, heavens, and shadow. Avatar, a small white cat who appears to deliver messages and blessings. Cozy is a large house cat with stars glittering off his tail. Sometimes he appears in very strange robes or other costumes, depending on the nature of his arrival. He blesses his followers with visions of the future and special words they can use against chaos and their enemies. Cozy is said to inhabit a strange realm betwixt Hexus and Olgu. He basically is a little pocket realm. His followers can slip in and out of this realm, though it is said to be a place of many strange creatures and mystical artifacts. Cozy's temples are often places brimming with magic and will often take on a life of their own, changing colors or having star maps randomly appear on their roof. The followers of Cozy are often visited by him in dreams, and his priests are masters of interpreting these dreams. Using special runes, they can decipher hidden meanings and look into other realms. As priests hold many odd views about the nature of reality and chaos and conduct secret rituals to deepen their understanding. His especially blessed followers will often have familiars who appear as variants on casts. variants of cats. Sometimes with wings, sometimes with fiery tails, sometimes with extra eyes. So yeah, that's basically the city, the main theme of it, and the little gods that I came up with for the city. Hopefully you guys thought that was interesting. Hopefully you enjoyed me babbling about my free city. And I don't know how much of that is like pushing the lore because I'm not as familiar. I know that there are lesser gods that can kind of get away with worship and doing different things. I don't know if I...
Remove the warlord and we'll be just fine.
Oh. Oh, more payments. And things like that. But yeah, no, I had a lot of fun writing it, and I'm going to continue to work on it and work on a big Google Doc so that if you want to, you can just like
Hungry.
read this information out and stuff like that. But I noticed as I was going over my notes that there were several grammatical errors and mistakes and things like that, so I'm going to fix those first before I uh, post it. Anyway, I hope you guys all enjoyed that, and maybe leave a comment down below, tell me what you thought of it, and all that fun stuff. And I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day and have many hugs and love and all kinds of stuff like that going for you. Okay, bye bye. Also, don't cheat in Total War Warhammer. It's not. It's nowhere near as fun as just playing the game. I just did this because so I didn't have to pay too much attention to it. But I probably could have just played normally now that I'm thinking about it. Okay, bye.